Joining us now on stage, please welcome Wynee Tyree.
Welcome, welcome. I don't know about you guys, but I want to start every Tuesday morning like that. I feel like Jeff did an amazing job, so thank you for getting the tone set. And I'm excited to be here today and be a part of IDEAcademy, share the stage with exciting thought leaders from our region and from across the country. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about how little voices are driving big business. I have the pleasure of working with and children for a living and listening to those little voices, and sometimes the clarity and the insight that comes from them is amazing. This week, as I was getting ready to come to IDEAcademy, my son oversaw me practicing and rehearsing. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I got to make sure to remember all those words for that stage." And he said, "Just make it up." And I was like, I should. I won't. But what you might get today is something that I've rehearsed for 2 weeks or something that I made up in the car ride over. But sometimes the clarity that comes from those young voices is sometimes what we need as professionals and as business people. Young people can make us smarter, they can make us stronger in business, and I want to talk to you about what that looks like today. Traditionally, when we approach innovation and growth, which all of us are asked to do, whether you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or you're the leader of a church organization, odds are you are being pushed to expand your services, to grow your customer base, to increase sales, to drive more revenue. We tend to do this by looking up. We look at innovators and leaders in our category and say, what are they doing right and what can we learn from them? We sometimes look forward and say, okay, what's coming down the innovation pipeline? What are those technologies that I can leverage moving forward? How can our products and services be enhanced by what's coming down that pipeline? We sometimes look to the side and say, okay, what are our category adjacencies? Where can we make a lateral category move for growth? And sometimes we look to the side a little bit differently and say, okay, what are our competitors doing? Where are they winning and where might we be vulnerable? But today I'd like to challenge you to think again and to look down, as odd as that may sound, but to look down at those that are 18 and under, because it's these little voices and sometimes these faces that you're rolling your eyes at sometimes that might hold the answers to not only what's now, but to what's next. Let's first look at their numbers. As a generation following boomers, following Generation X and millennials, Gen Z has now swollen to be more than 70 million strong and is slated to become the largest generational cohort in the US. Given their size alone and the fact that they comprise roughly 20% of the US population, they're an important generation to pay attention to. Likewise, they have incredible and tremendous spending power. What's exciting about studying young people is they really have that power in 3 different ways. Estimates are that roughly $500 billion, all the way up through $1 trillion, is being moved or influenced by young people and young voices. As I mentioned, that can happen in 3 ways. Number one, they have their own money. Actually, roughly $44 billion of their own personal money is being spent. Sometimes this comes from allowance for chores that, parentheses, they never do. It comes from holiday money, it comes from birthday money. If you're a teen, it comes from that part-time job that you have. But they're spending an incredible amount of money. They're buying everything from candy to apps to clothing to video games. They're really kind of the lifeblood of a Justice, a Build-A-Bear, a Forever 21, if you're a teen, a Taco Bell. But they definitely have their own money to spend. We can see that on a teen front, historically, teens have really been the lifeblood of movie theaters, of malls, for instance. But as their entertainment and social needs have become met by the devices that are in their hands, we see these industries really struggling. And I'm sure you've seen news stories like this where malls are just kind of shuttering across the country. There's no doubt that that's heavily impacted by the fact that teens aren't there anymore. Young people are also key influencers. They're influencing their parents, but they're also influencing other families. Today, I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much just ate what was on the dinner table and you kind of had no choice. Today, young influencers are people in your own home, and contemporary parents are saying, come on, let's co-create the grocery list together. What do you want to eat? Let's make sure that I make you happy. And so that dynamic is very different today, and it's very welcomed by contemporary parents. We see that vacations, for instance, are influenced, the family car, even the family home. It's not uncommon to have the kids come in and sort of make that decision when you're real estate shopping, as crazy and as insane as that sounds. But the reality is that if a mom wants to go to Myrtle Beach for vacation and the kids want to go to Orlando, pack your bags, we're probably going to Orlando. And the parents are taking one for the team yet once again. Let's also talk about how young people are really influencing other families. Thanks to the likes of YouTube and the power of social media, it's not just young people influencing their parents, they're also influencing other children and other parents. Take, for instance, Evan, who is an 11-year-old YouTuber with his own channel called EvanTube HD, to the tune of 3 billion views and a multi-million-dollar salary that he's bringing in when he's not in school, from product kickbacks and placements and advertising for unboxing toys. Do you know what that is? Do you know what it literally means? Like, you make a video of yourself opening a package, talking about it, and then playing with it. And people, young and old, are willing to watch these videos. What's fascinating is that influence is so powerful that with, an Evan, for instance, says, hey, Crayola's new silly scent markers are amazing, they smell delicious, and I love them. Next thing you know, millions more families are buying those products. Thirdly, young people will be future consumers for you. Even if they're not buying your products and services today, you want to make a good relationship with them, because most companies are seeking sort of a cradle-to-grave brand strategy in hopes that those little bodies that are filling those small boots will soon have money to spend as they wear those bigger boots. There's a reason why a Home Depot, for instance, has a Saturday morning kids workshop. It's not that on Monday those kids are coming back in to buy a new dishwasher, but that brand relationship is being created at a young age. If you think about it, it makes sense. Rarely do you sort of grow up loving and drinking Coke and grow up to be an adult who prefers Pepsi. Beyond their sheer size and their purchase power, young people are transforming our culture. They are transforming the way we learn. If you think about it now, there are millions of kids who go to a virtual educational institution, a virtual high school, even middle school, and those are quickly, well, I shouldn't say this because they're becoming more powerful. I should say that. Virtual institutions. And those institutions who have traditional brick and mortar need to make sure that they're offering those remote services. In traditional schools, you're essentially seeing textbooks that have been replaced by tablets. You're seeing lectures that are replaced by videos now. At young ages, cursive isn't even really taught anymore, so you might want to rethink that thought that your 16-year-old job applicant might even have a signature, because quite frankly, you can't test that on a standardized form. So one of those things that's been removed. But the way we learn is very different. The way children learn and the way they're ushering that in is very different. I don't know if you saw a news story a couple of months ago of the 8-year-old boy who took his parents' car keys after they went to sleep and drove he and his 4-year-old little sister to McDonald's. So 8 and 4 driving to McDonald's, just let that marinate for a second. He learned to drive watching YouTube videos. Had never driven a car and learned to drive watching YouTube videos. And of course, this made kind of the national news. It's like, no way. But the reality is, yes way. Young people are learning everything through Alexa, through Siri, through YouTube. Young people are also transforming the way that we communicate. And yes, that's my Bitmoji there. Good morning, or hello, sunshine. Oh, it says on my way. I'm on my way, but I'm here. But that is my Bitmoji. Today, communication has really evolved from the written word to the typed word, and from the typed word to the tapped word, and then even more so from the tapped word to the snapped image. Communication continues to evolve. It has become much more visual. It's become much more emotional. It's become much more image and video laden. And it results in basically a form of communication that's being driven by young people that's changing that communication culture that might look just like this with no words at all. Young people are also revolutionizing and transforming the way we think about shopping. Different son, by the way, too. But I recently noticed that my 8-year-old was wearing a new pair of shoes, and I said to him, "Where'd you get those sneakers?" And he said, "I got them in the mail." And I said, "No, but like, where did you get them?" Assuming his father ordered them. I said, "No, where'd you get them? Like, what store did they come from?" And he said, "They came in the mail." sort of in this bewildered, like, what are you not understanding kind of way. But when I think about that, and when you hear that, you have to think about what's the implication on brick and mortar? What's the implication on retailers when a generation of kids is growing up thinking that the world just kind of happens, that your parents might just lean over and press an Amazon Dash button, or they might say out loud to Alexa, reorder laundry detergent. Their subscription to their new toy package might come from Kiwi Crate, or they might get dinner from HelloFresh or Blue Apron. That's the kind of implications we have to think about moving forward. Young people are also transforming what leisure looks like. When we look outside, we see that leisure looks very different today than it did 20 or 30, and definitely more, years ago. What used to be very informal, fun-based, unstructured play has quickly been replaced by highly structured, quite frankly, highly micromanaged by adults, leisure that really results in you better specialize quickly and you better be amazing, usually by the time you're out of elementary school. There's no such thing as like a 12-year-old doing like a rec sport. Like that really doesn't exist anymore. When we look inside, it's not that young people are glued to their TVs with their families anymore either, but you better believe that you'll see one of these in everyone's hand, whether it's a tablet or a mobile device. Entertainment and screen-based entertainment has become much more me time than we time, and it's not that the family's gathered around the TV, but it's that the TV never left my hand. The values and expectations are different of young people, and that's really what's driving that transformation and that change. Let me walk you through a couple of those values and expectations. The first is that they really expect to share everything they do and everything they think. And it's pretty much all they've ever known and all they've ever seen, and their parents model it, quite frankly. Now you don't just go eat pizza, you take a picture of your pizza and you blog about your pizza and you talk about your pizza and you put the pizza next to your face. Like, we have to share everything. This is what young people do. The expectation is that everything around you is sort of share-worthy, and that's really important. If you are, as I mentioned, your parents might model this for you. If you're born, your parents might actually create your first Instagram account for you. It's not that like, oh, hey, I'm 13, I'm finally gonna get on Instagram. You might have been baby Chanel Nicole and had an Instagram since the time you were 1. Because again, they're millennial parents. That's the expectation, is that they share everything. There's also an expectation and a desire for experiences really over possessions. Today, it's not uncommon to desire an amazing sweet 16 party instead of your first car when you turn 16. That possession is sort of less valuable, especially when we talk about a car, than maybe an event that's very share-worthy, that's got lots of social clout, that's got a lot of kind of social currency built into it. Decades ago, getting a car was a really big deal because you turn 16 and now it's like, I can get away from my parents, the real social life begins. Like, this is the time that freedom really sets in. But today, that happens when you get your first phone. I was observing an interview recently in a kid's home, and the kid, it was classic. He said 11 is the golden age. He said that by that time, everyone has their phone, the social world opens up, and everything changes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 11 is the golden age? I'm so beyond the golden age. But anyway, the insight there and the clarity around that kind of freedom and excitement of being sort of parent-free at a younger age means that when you're 16, why bother driving? Because my parents can pretty much just drive me around anyway. It's that experience and it's that excitement in the social world that really is the expectation. Young people also expect and now have an assumption that everything will be tracked or measured, from your heart rate to your popularity. A lot of kids, and you don't see this as much around here, but a lot of kids have sensors on them from the time they're in the crib. They make onesies now that can tell you your heart rate, your breathing, your body position, to let you know that, oh, your baby flipped over in the night. Like, oh my gosh. So then the parents get a notification on their phone. But there are sensors and trackers from, you guys know this, the Fitbits, the Apple Watches, the trackers. A lot of young people have been tracked since they were born and don't think anything of it and now actually expect it. They assume that your garage, it might just open when your car comes up because it should be smart enough to do that. They expect that they'll be able to track their own popularity. When I was growing up, popularity was sort of this vague or subjective assumption that might have been based on the clothes you wear, but today it's very measurable. You have 2 million likes, you have 12 likes, you are more popular than you. It's very clear, it's very tangible, it's very concrete, and it's also very overwhelming to come of age in a time where that sort of personal life and the public life has become quite blurred. Young people also expect things around them to be smart. It's not uncommon for us to see kids when we're studying them in a retail context that they'll kind of walk down an aisle and press things and touch things and get to a stuffed animal and say, this one's broken. In their world, objects do things and they know things. YouTube knows everything, Siri knows everything, Alexa knows everything, and objects that don't know things and don't do things can seem broken. They expect their car to be smart enough to know when they've pulled in the driveway. They expect their apps to tell them when it's time to do their homework. And maybe your refrigerator is smart enough to help you make the grocery list. The reality is that when we look across the board and go down to sort of a business and economics level, young people are transforming and changing our economy, especially when we look at teens and that older end of the Generation Z segment that's entering the workforce now. The reality is they're disrupting business in the way that we've ever known it. They are inventing workarounds that connect us and streamline things and sort of creatively do things more efficiently than we might have thought. They're also dismantling hierarchy and looking at ways to to kind of democratize what success might look like. The goal might not be to have the corner office anymore. The goal is that we're all hanging out and having fun in an open space that even has no offices. That has no doors and windows. They're collaborating rather than competing, and that's a value, and that's a great thing. They're building the next great in business and having the desires to do so rather than going to work for it. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as a kidpreneur. But today, you can take college courses, you can go to camps when you're 8, 9, 10 years old on how to become a kidpreneur. Again, that's language that didn't exist, but today that's part of curriculum and it's a core value of kids and teens coming of age. When we look at sort of the evolution of the economy and what's happened because of the generational values, we can see some pretty clear differences. When we look at boomers and older, this was a time that was really driven by manufacturing, and it was driven by a time where what you did with your hands really mattered. It was a generation where an economy that was really based on an assumption of what can I do, what can I build, what can I physically create? Gen X really ushered in this information age where the internet came to be and everything and anything became knowable. And so what happened is we saw an evolution from hands to head, and an evolution from an assumption that I'm going to build things and that's going to be how I succeed, to I'm going to know things and it's brain power that's really going to get me ahead. Today, what we see with younger millennials and Generation Z is that they're part of a connection age, and it's really driven by a sharing economy. It's very highly emotive. Again, it's sharing based, and it's moved and reflective of a time where we've moved from hands to head to heart. This is kind of where the next generation will come into the workforce. As we look forward, you're clearly going to have in your workplace a very highly tech-saturated generation, a very heart and emotion-filled generation that's eager to connect and make change in a different way, but they might not be too excited to get their hands dirty. And that's not a diss, that's just kind of the reality of what the generational values are, because that's not really what defines your success. If you think about the future and kind of consider, and I'll give you some things to think about as you move forward, as you think about growth and innovation. One is, let's say you're in education. How will you meet the needs of this young girl who's grown up watching an iPad in her stroller? Can you see that? How are you going to meet her educational needs when she's in first grade, let alone when she's a college freshman? If you're in technology, what services and products will you offer to teens that now sort of navigate their world through voice and through video? If you run a nonprofit, how can you tap a generation of young people who are so eager to make a difference, so eager for a challenge? How can they help grow your organization, and how can you leverage them? I'd encourage you, as you think about growth, to think again and to look down at the opportunities that might lie at those 18 and under. I think that ultimately, there's a lot that's there. I'll just say that, and we could talk about it for days. There's a lot that's there, but ultimately what you need to think about is that these people will be my consumers, they will be my influencers, and they'll be my future employees, and ideally my future leaders. And I'll just leave you with a final quote that I think you might have seen up top that's one of my favorites, especially as you think about innovation and thinking laterally and what are the possibilities. Think left and think right and think low and think high. Oh, the thinks you can think up if only you try. Dr. Seuss. The end. Thank you.